there's a trick, one so subtle, so powerful, that only a rare few ever discover it, and even fewer dare to use it. It's not a gimmick, it's not manipulation, it's a lens, a mirror, if you will, that once held to the world, forever changes how you move through it. The trick? If you want to change people, change how you see them first. Let that sink in. You see, we are mirrors to each other, and the moment you adjust your reflection, your internal narrative about someone, their behavior begins to shift in turn. Tonight, I want to take you into the depths of this truth. I want to reveal to you the psychology behind it, the power it holds, and why only 1% ever master it. There is a deep and quiet force at work within the psyche, one that often moves without our awareness, shaping our reality, coloring our perceptions, and determining the very quality of our interactions. This force is projection, the silent puppeteer behind much of what we believe to be the outer world. It is not the external that governs our experience of life, but the internal. We believe we are observing the world as it is, but in truth, we are filtering it through the lens of our own unresolved emotions, past traumas, and unconscious beliefs. Consider how often we misjudge others, not because of who they are, but because of who we fear ourselves to be. A man burdened with deep-rooted distrust walks into a room and senses hostility in neutral expressions. He sees conspiracies in casual glances, threats in silence. But are these threats truly present, or is he simply watching the shadows of his own inner turmoil dance across the walls of his perception? The answer lies not in the external world, but in the hidden chambers of his own soul. The room hasn't changed, the story in his mind has. This is the power of projection. It transforms the mundane into the menacing, the neutral into the narrative of our deepest fears. To uncover projection is to awaken. It is to pull back the veil and meet the world not as a battlefield, but as a mirror. When we see others as lazy, hostile, or untrustworthy, we must ask, what part of ourselves have we disowned and cast into their image? The act of recognizing projection is not an intellectual exercise. It is an act of courage. It demands a descent into the self, an honest reckoning with our wounds, and a willingness to reclaim the pieces of ourselves we've tried to forget. There is immense liberation in this. Consider the story of a teacher who constantly viewed her students as lazy and uninspired. She was frustrated, exhausted, and filled with silent resentment. But it was not the students who were the source of her pain. It was her own unacknowledged fear of failure, her belief that effort would lead to disappointment, that she projected onto them. Through the vulnerable journey of self-reflection and therapy, she saw the truth. She had been teaching not from trust, but from fear. And when she began to believe in her students' potential, truly believe, everything changed. Their grades improved, their spirits lifted, and the classroom became a place of growth rather than resistance. Not because the students transformed overnight, but because she did. To master projection is not to control others, but to reclaim the reins of one's own soul. It is to stop being a puppet of the unseen and become the author of our inner narrative. It is through this sacred task that we begin to meet the world not as a threat, but as a reflection. And in that reflection, we find our truest selves. There is a force within us that responds not to logic or instruction, but to the subtle whisper of expectation. It is ancient, hidden beneath the surface of awareness, and it stirs when we are seen. Not merely observed with the eyes, but seen with the soul. This force is the unconscious, and it listens more closely to belief than to any spoken word. Human beings are not machines, set into motion by mere commands. They are vessels of possibility, shaped and reshaped by what others hold to be true about them. The child who is told she is brilliant, the man who is seen as strong, the woman who is believed to be wise. They begin to align themselves with that invisible image, drawn toward it as if by an unseen magnet. This is no mere fantasy, it is a truth etched into the deepest layers of our psyche. When a teacher was told in a quiet and confidential moment that a particular child was exceptional, something profound occurred. The teacher did not intentionally alter the curriculum, they did not overtly show favoritism. And yet, by the year's end, the child soared. This is not sorcery, it is belief made manifest. The teacher's unconscious had shifted, and through 1,000 small acts, an extra moment of patience, a glimmer of encouragement, a look of recognition, the child began to believe it too. And that belief unlocked a door in the mind that had previously been shut. This is the silent architecture of the Pygmalion effect. We craft each other through the images we carry in our minds. We sculpt one another not with stone and chisel, but with the inner eye, where imagination meets conviction. To believe in someone is to call forth a future that does not yet exist, and yet, paradoxically, already lives in the hidden soil of their being. When we look upon another and see only their flaws, their limitations, their history of failure, we bind them in those chains. We keep them in the tomb of our expectations. But when we dare to look deeper, when we envision the seed of greatness inside even the most broken soul, we begin to water that seed with our attention, our care, and our unspoken faith. We must understand the responsibility this carries. The unconscious does not argue. It accepts. It does not question motive or fact. It responds to meaning. What we believe deeply and emotionally about another human being has the power to shape them. This power is sacred. It is not to be wielded carelessly. If we project cynicism and doubt, we condemn others to a fate they may never escape. But if we look with eyes of possibility, we give them wings they didn't know they had. We are, all of us, each other's mirrors. The question is, what image are we reflecting back? Attention is not merely a passive act. It is an invocation of being. Wherever attention flows, there flows vitality, identity, and transformation. It is the sacred force that animates potential into reality. In a world overflowing with noise and distraction, to offer true attention is akin to casting a spell. It is the philosopher's stone of human interaction, capable of turning base moments into gold. To understand this, one must not simply think about attention as focus, but as an energetic offering, a silent affirmation of what exists, what matters, and what may yet become. Imagine a beam of light in a dark room. That which it illuminates becomes visible, real, undeniable. So too with attention. It does not merely observe, it conjures into being. The world responds to our gaze. Our relationships, our children, our colleagues, they reflect back to us what we have chosen to see in them. And in this simple, subtle choice lies a tremendous power. The alchemy of attention is the quiet miracle by which we shape each other and ourselves. There is a profound psychological truth that we rarely acknowledge. People become what we believe them to be, not because of manipulation or illusion, but because belief carried through attention becomes a mirror in which others recognize their own unrealized selves. We are born into stories, tales told by our parents, our peers, our culture, but the most potent narrative is the one constructed in the gaze of another. What someone sees when they truly see us has the power to reframe the very architecture of our identity. Let us reflect on the story of the manager and her employee. A man, labeled and perhaps even resigned to being late, careless, disengaged, a shadow among others, was seen, not for his shortcomings but for a flicker of strength, influence. The manager's words were simple, almost offhand, but her gaze had shifted. She no longer peered through the narrow lens of deficiency, but instead allowed her attention to drift toward a latent gift. That single moment of recognition pierced the veil that the man had long wrapped around himself. For the first time, someone noticed the invisible gold beneath the rust. And that noticing was enough. From that moment forward, the man was changed. Not because he had learned new skills or been threatened with consequences, but because his self-pitch had been altered at the root. The truth is, he had likely always had that influence, but like a tree growing in the shadow of criticism, it had withered before it could bloom. Now, with light shining upon it, it reached upward. And so he transformed not through force, but through attention. This is the silent revolution that takes place when we learn to wield our attention consciously. The world teaches us to dissect, to critique, to diagnose. We are trained from an early age to seek flaws, to fix problems, to solve brokenness. And while this has its place, it often blinds us to the quiet magic that happens when we choose instead to see what is already whole. The soul does not respond well to constant repair. It flourishes when it is seen, when it is acknowledged, when it is trusted. Attention is a form of love, not sentimental, not dramatic, but deep, steady, and affirming. It tells someone, "I see you. You are not invisible. You matter." In this way, attention becomes a force of creation. It awakens what has slept in someone's heart. It whispers to the forgotten talents, the neglected virtues, the buried dreams. And with time, these hidden seeds begin to rise. But here is the deeper truth. This alchemy works in both directions. When we fixate on someone's flaws, we magnify them. Our attention feeds those aspects of others like a fire fueled by wind. Criticism, even when silent, even when well-intended, often deepens the grooves of limitation. We may think we are helping someone get better, but what we are doing is confirming their worst fears about themselves. We trap them in the version of them we are unwilling to look beyond. And in doing so, we diminish not only their potential, but our own capacity for transformation. What we see is not objective. It is shaped by what we expect to see and what we are willing to see. The act of looking carries within it the seeds of judgment or liberation. We must learn to see with reverence, with curiosity, with the courage to look beyond the surface. Not because we are naive, not because we ignore reality, but because we understand that reality is not fixed, it is fluid, and our attention shapes its current. This power is not limited to leaders or managers. It belongs to parents, teachers, lovers, friends. In every relationship, we are holding a mirror. We can choose whether it distorts or reveals, whether it cages or frees. The parent who constantly points out what the child is doing wrong may believe they are teaching discipline, but more often they are building an identity of inadequacy. The friend who sees potential in you when you are lost may become the voice that pulls you from the brink. The partner who believes in your goodness, even when you falter, may become the one who restores your belief in yourself. To give attention with intention is to become an architect of souls. It is to plant light in the soil of another's being and trust that it will grow. It is not always easy. We are conditioned to be vigilant, to protect ourselves by assuming the worst. But this vigilance comes at a cost. We lose the chance to call forth beauty. We lose the ability to shape a higher truth. There is also a mirror within. Just as we can transform others through our gaze, so too can we transform ourselves. The same principle applies inwardly. Where you place your attention within, you give life. If you dwell constantly on your inadequacies, you expand them. If you dare to focus, even briefly, on your inner strength, you awaken it. Self-compassion, self-recognition, these are not indulgences, they are necessary acts of inner alchemy. There is something deeply sacred about the power we hold in our gaze. It carries with it a responsibility. We are all creators, whether we know it or not. Our attention is the wand we wave each day, casting spells of despair or hope, limitation or liberation. We must ask ourselves again and again, what am I choosing to see? And what am I thereby choosing to create? In the end, the world we live in is shaped not just by events, but by how we attend to those events. Our relationships are shaped not just by words, but by the quality of our presence. Our own growth is shaped not just by effort, but by the gentle act of noticing what is already good within us. Tension is alchemy. Where you place it, you give life. Where you withhold it, you allow that life to remain dormant. And in choosing where to place it, you are writing the story of others and of yourself. Let that story be one of light. Let your gaze not only see, but believe. In doing so, you will perform the quiet miracle that changes everything. Real change, true, lasting, soul-deep transformation does not begin in the outer world. It begins within, in the quiet, often unseen realm of the self. We are tempted, time and again, to reach for control, to bend others to our will through argument or sheer force of personality. We mistake dominance for leadership and persuasion for truth. Yet, all efforts to shape the world around us will falter if they are not grounded in the soil of our own inner evolution. We must understand that the world is not separate from us. It mirrors us. What we see in others, what we seek to change in them, is often but a reflection of what remains unhealed within ourselves. When we cease to react out of habit and begin to reflect with awareness, a powerful shift occurs. The energy of an interaction bends toward harmony. It is not a technique, not a strategy, but a movement of being. A person who has cultivated stillness within emanates that stillness outwardly. It becomes impossible to resist. Think of the moments in your life when someone responded to your anger, not with escalation, but with calm presence. Something in you softened, something awakened. That is not submission. It is resonance. The one who leads from within, who dares to do the inner work, becomes a quiet catalyst for change in others. Consider a relationship where tension and conflict once reigned. Perhaps it seemed as though no amount of words could build a bridge. But then, one partner begins to turn inward, not in retreat, but in radical responsibility. They begin to heal the wounds that once demanded defense. They begin to choose peace, not because they are weak, but because they are strong enough to bear discomfort without lashing out. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. The other partner, sensing this new vibration, begins to mirror it. The dance of dysfunction dissolves, not by force, but by frequency. This is the alchemy of the soul. To elevate the world around you, you must be willing to face the world within. You cannot lead someone to peace if you are at war with yourself. You cannot expect clarity from others if your own vision is clouded by unexamined wounds. Your influence is not in your words, but in your state of being. People do not follow advice, they follow energy. And your energy becomes luminous when you dare to go within and do the difficult work of transformation. The heart longs for congruence, for a life that reflects the truth we carry inside. To live that truth, to embody it, even when no one else does, is the path of integrity. It is not the easy path, but it is the only one that leads to true change. If you want the world to shift, do not wait. Begin within. The outer world will not remain unaffected, for it must respond to the silent, unwavering power of a soul in alignment. There is a delicate mechanism in the psyche that mirrors the soul of another back to them, an ancient, intuitive trick of reflection. In its highest form, it becomes a sacred exchange, a communion of spirits that uplifts, inspires, and reveals the hidden potential that yearns to emerge from the depths of a person. But beware, for this same mechanism, this mirror of the soul, holds the potential to deceive. Like a double-edged sword, it may offer healing or harm, liberation or control. The human mind is exquisitely responsive to the gaze of another, What we reflect, we amplify, and what we amplify, we shape. Consider those who master this mirror not to serve, but to dominate. The cult leader does not empower, he inflates. He sees not the authentic self in others, but a canvas for his grand delusions. Toxic influences do not connect, they project. They cast their own fragmented ideals onto their audience and call it truth. The faces that follow them are not seen as individuals, but as extensions of a crafted fantasy, a kingdom of shadows built upon the hunger for belonging. These are not relationships, but enchantments, illusions disguised as intimacy. The danger lies not in the mirror itself, but in the intent of the one who holds it. To reflect another's light with integrity demands that we first recognize the dark corners of our own soul. It requires a humility that few are willing to endure, the willingness to be wrong, to be uncertain, to truly see another human being not as a vessel to fill, but as a mystery to behold. It is easy to slip into control when fear drives the encounter, easy to project our own longings onto others and call it love, guidance, leadership. But such control is brittle. It may compel for a time, but it withers the spirit of those who receive it and ultimately corrupts the one who wields it. So ask yourself, when you look into the eyes of another, are you truly seeing them? Or are you only seeing the parts that serve your image, your needs, your story? Are you lifting them into their own becoming, or pulling them into your orbit? True presence is not about perfection. It is about curiosity, compassion, a fierce devotion to truth, even when it unsettles. This path demands more than skill. It demands integrity of soul. It calls for the dissolution of ego, so that empathy may take its place. When you reflect another human being with honesty and reverence, you do not rob them of power, you awaken it. You do not shape them into what you need, they become more fully who they are. That is the sacred gift of this psychological mirror. Use it not as a tool to bind, but as a vessel to set free. And in doing so, you too are freed. So I ask you now, whose life could change if you changed the story you hold about them? What power lies dormant in the people around you, just waiting for someone to believe it's there? Be that person. Be the rare one who sees, not just with eyes, but with understanding. Because once you do, the world starts to shift. One person at a time. And it begins with you.